Hi, my name is Kip Cordell, and this is my presentation on my case study, and I chose Punishing Choices, Challenges of Mandated Reporting. Background and context on this case study. Miss Whitford is in her second year as a Teach for America teacher. And the situation that she is in now, which is whether to report suspected child abuse or not, is and can be difficult for an experienced teacher, and she is in her second year. So she doesn't have a whole lot of experience or background to pull on for this kind of situation. Miss Whitford is also still adjusting to new cultural norms. She is from the Northeast and she is teaching in the South. So where she's teaching from, in the case study, it says it's kind of much more accepted, a more cultural norm to have some sort of corporal punishment in the household. Denise Harrison is a regular parent volunteer, and she does practice corporal punishment. However, Miss Whitford has never suspected any form of child abuse. Jamal, who is the child, has always seemed to be a very happy, healthy kid. Any sort of bruises or things she's seen prior have all been minor. His personality hasn't been affected. The relationship between Jamal and his mom has always seemed loving, so she really hasn't had anything severe or anything that she's really been concerned with. Different experiences, opinions of DCS by people in this story is pretty evident. Miss Whitford, the people she would go to for advice, her co-worker is very, it seems like, not anti-DCS, but does not have a real favorable opinion of DCS with the experiences after he has actually reported in the past, while her principal is a strong advocate of reporting. His experiences actually in the system have been very positive, so he is very pro-report. And Tennessee's DCS in general has a checkered past and an inconsistent operation. They don't have, one of the things they cite in the stories, they don't have enough people to actually report and check in the homes that they need to. Jamal has shown minor bruises prior to this incident, but nothing that raised alarms for Miss Whitford. I touched on that before. Circumstances that separate this instance from prior times. Change in Mrs. Harrison's relationship status. A lot of this seemed to happen once Mrs. Harrison started seeing and dating somebody new. The student's behavior. Jamal used to be a energetic, kind of ornery kid, but never a problem. Mrs. Harrison still enjoyed him in the classroom, but his behavior has changed noticeably. The severity of the bruise that she saw, and Miss Whitford's initial reaction and instinct to the injury to the student. She never had concerns prior, but initially when she saw this, her gut reaction told her something wasn't right. And all of this information was taken from the case study posted on the site, which is referenced at the end of my presentation. Legal and ethical standards, I'm going to use Kansas because these would be what would be guiding my thought process and my actions. And all of this information was from the 2012 statute, Article 22, revised Kansas Code for the Care of Children by the Kansas legislature. So at the beginning, it says reporting of certain abuse or neglect of children, persons reporting reports made to whom, basically, when any of the following persons has reason to suspect that a child has been harmed as a result of physical, mental, or emotional abuse or neglect of abuse, the person shall report the matter promptly as provided in subsections B and C there. And then underneath, in section C, you see teachers are listed and school administrators are listed as those people that need to promptly report if they suspect anything. And then later on in this slide, violations, you see failure to make a report required by this section is a Class B misdemeanor. It is not a defense that another mandatory reporter made a report. So that's basically saying even if your coworker reported something, if you also suspect it, you must report that too. And then intentionally preventing or interfering with the making of a report is also a Class B misdemeanor. And all that comes from the State Library of Kansas. Now, in the Kansas Educator Code of Conduct, it lists two different responsibilities I saw that I wanted to focus on. One is the responsibilities to your district. Kansas educators must adhere to the conditions of contractual obligations with professional practice. To me, mandatory reporting is one of the conditions of a contractual obligation with professional practice. And then the second bullet point there, fulfill reporting requirements honestly and accurately. And then responsibilities to the student. Appropriate conduct includes but is not limited to the following: fulfilling all mandatory reporting requirements for child abuse. So those are all from the Kansas Educator Code of Conduct. We have the obligation, the responsibilities to our district and to our students that if we see something, we need to say something. We are there to provide a safe and productive place for students to learn. And if we do not do these, we are not doing that part of our job. So I did look up some statistics from the Kansas Department for Children and Families. So Tennessee, in the case study, had their DCS. This is Kansas's version of the DCS, the Department for Children and Families. These were all pulled from their website. The most frequent abuse neglect reason for removal into foster care is lack of supervision. So the most frequent reason kids get pulled out of the home is lack of supervision. Statewide, 37.29% of children are placed with relatives. 8.19% are placed in group or residential care. Statewide, 54.36% of children in out-of-home placement have a goal of reunification. So 54.36% of the children that are put in foster care, there still is that ultimate goal of them being reunited with their families. The largest age group that are in out-of-home placement are children 10 and over, and that is 50.3%. And on April 30th of this year, there were 6,428 children in out-of-home placement. And I did also happen to see that I believe the county that my school is in, they're in the top 5 of number of students, or number of children in the system. The average length of time in placement for children who have exited care this year is 23 months. So 23 months is the average length of time that a child is in placement. Statewide, there have been 765 adoptions finalized. 48% have a relative as their adoptive resource. So almost half of children are staying with some form of family member if they've been adopted. So, factoring in everything, the background, the context, the laws, and then those DCF stats when I saw those for the state of Kansas, my analysis on this whole situation would be, while difficult, obligations to report have to be honored and they have to be followed. The only thing that can honestly make a gray area here are thoughts and opinions. In Kansas, the law is black and white. I know in the state of Tennessee, the case study mentioned that the word reasonable is in some of the laws, and reasonable can be a subjective term. But really, when you get down to it, the law is fairly black and white. If you see something, you have to say something. And really, the only thing that might make a person really wonder if they should or not, in this story, in the case study anyway, is really just her thoughts on, how the cultural norms are swaying her relationship with the parent. So, while Miss Whitford is faced with a tough circumstance for multiple reasons, she must report. Some of my reasons I felt for this were her administration, so her principal, is very supportive of this. She has no reason to fear backlash if she were to bring the issue to the principal. So there's really nothing stopping her as far as that way. Professional standing. If she does not report, she is potentially, in my opinion, putting her career in jeopardy. It is not her job to try and determine or guess what Jamal's DCS experience would be. Her duty is to report. In the case study, it talked about the two different coworkers. Her coworker she talked to, who does not think highly of DCS. Her principal had a great experience with DCS. Miss Whitford, she's not there to try to say whether Jamal would have a good experience or not. Her job is to report. And while it's tough, being a mandatory reporter is part of her job. It comes with the territory of being a educator. She could be potentially saving Jamal from a much harsher or fatal case of abuse later. It may damage her relationship with Mrs. Harrison. It might ruin it. However, it could have Mrs. Harrison reflect on the situation she's putting her son in. It may guide Mrs. Harrison to make very difficult yet ultimately beneficial choices when it comes to the home that her and Jamal are both living in. And an attempt to increase Jamal's future safety is worth the risk of potentially damaging a relationship with a parent. So, with all that being said, I truly feel Mrs. Whitfield has a duty and a moral obligation to report what she's seen. All my references here, these are at the bottom of each slide, but the justiceinschools.org, the article from the Harvard Graduate School of Education, the Kansas Legislators Statute, the Kansas State Department of Education Code of Conduct, and then the statistics I saw from the Kansas Department for Children and Families. So, thank you for your time. Feel free to leave any thoughts or feedback. Thanks.